Hey guys, it's Doc, and today I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about biochar. It's going to be put into simple terms, and I'm actually going to do some live experiments and demonstrations for you while I'm here. So hold on one sec. Hey guys, so the only way really I think to do this is probably just to sit down and have a discussion, to do some live demonstrations, to actually show you the research that we've been working on for the past, it's almost a year now. Bring this all together in simple terms, break it down so that you can understand it, and try and keep this video, that could be a 5-hour video, try and keep it as short as possible so that you understand completely. Now, before I start, I think one of the most important things that you're going to get from this is understanding the difference between biochars that are made for soils, tilled soils, such as gardens, flower beds, actually working it into the soil, versus a biochar that's designed specifically to be applied to the lawn. That's a huge, huge difference. And that's why Humichar, the new biochar, spreadable biochar, was actually created. It's a brand new product that we work with Anderson's on over the past year, and it's just now coming to the market. It'll be available on Amazon, I think probably at the end of this month, which is February. So look for it there. Now, before I begin, of course, I'm going to give you some reference links. I'm going to actually display a video, and I'm going to put links to items and different research, and it's going to be in the description below. So in the description below, there's going to be a link, and that'll take you over to our website, howtowithdoc.com, and all this information is going to be there. So if you say, well, wait, I missed that, don't worry. It's going to be on there. I'm going to ask you to watch a video, which is done by the BBC. I'm going to ask you to watch that video after this video, and I'm actually going to display it on the page so you don't have to go searching for it. It'll be right there so you can find it. Also, the Bermuda Lawn Guide is out. That was released a little while ago. It's consistently being updated. You can find a link to it there. All right, so what are we going to cover in this video? We're going to cover the difference between garden soil biochar and lawn biochar. We're going to cover what is the goal, the ultimate goal of biochar. What is biochar? How does biochar work? The history and some of the research that's been done over the past decades on biochar. We're going to talk about charging, inoculating, and preloading biochar, whether you need to do it or not need to do it. Humic acid versus biochar. And we're going to talk about the different products that are out there as far as like mixes of biochar versus just regular plain biochar. The first thing I want to do is I want you to understand something. The only way that biochar works is when it's around the root zones of a plant. So number one, you have to understand this. The only way biochar works, and almost all the research that's been done up to this date has been done by mixing biochar into soils. So if you have a garden there, or all the research and study and all the experts that are out there, they're taking biochar, they're mixing it into soils, and they're doing their testing that way. Almost nobody has done testing, except for us, when it comes to strictly top applied biochars. And that's important because you're not going to till up your lawn. You understand that? You're not going to go out with a rototiller and till up your $15,000 sod lawn. You're going to be applying biochar from the top down. And all the other research and all the other studies out there are simply based on mixing biochar into the soil. That's a huge difference. That's why Humichar was developed, and I'm going to show you a live demonstration. I got a little board and a camera set up over here, why Humichar is effective. Let me put up a little picture real quick. And this is something that I really want to burn into your mind. The majority of biochars that are out there, when you apply them to your lawn, it takes them a while to work down through the grass, takes them a while to work down through the thatch layer, takes a while for it to actually get to the soil. So it may take weeks just to get down to the soil. And once it gets to the soil, it can't penetrate that soil. In other words, you're not tilling it. It has to be able to penetrate. And so really it's not giving your plants any benefit if it's not what? Remember what I said before? If it's not reaching the root zones. So it has to be around the root zones to be beneficial. Human char is made in the form of the Anderson's DG, which is a dispersible granular formula. As soon as these little granules touch water, in this product, I would say it's about 30 seconds, one little piece of this kind of just explodes or dissolves into thousands of these little microparticles. Those microparticles, and I'm going to take you outside and I'm going to show you the difference of this here in a minute. As soon as you wet it, it'll start to dissolve right away. Go back and wet it again, and it'll be right through the grass, through the thatch layer, onto the soil, and starting to work into your soil within 24 hours. You put it out before rain, it's going to immediately work through all that and get down to the soil layer and start working into the soil. There's no other biochar on the market. Let me say this again. There's no other biochar on the market that does this, that you can put into a spreader, put out heavy amounts of it. That's key. You got to put out a lot of it, put out heavy amounts of it, have it evenly disperse, and then have it immediately within 24 hours, all of it reach the soil level. Let's get that clear. That's done with, so you understand that. And you can read more about that at humanchar.com. Now, let's talk about what is biochar. Biochar. We're going to take a piece of wood, and if we put this wood on fire, it's going to burn because there's oxygen. You're going to see flames, and it's going to eventually turn into ash. If it doesn't burn all the way, it might turn into some charcoal. We take this, but how we make biochar is we take this wood and we put it into a closed system that superheats this wood up to 800 degrees Fahrenheit. We're going to superheat it. And what ends up happening is everything that's inside of this, including the water and all the organic matter, will turn into a gas. And that gas then leaves that chamber and is burned off. What remains? The only thing that remains when it's done right with biochar is carbon. And what you have is you now have a carbon skeleton. So that's what biochar is. You take wood or organic matter, you superheat it with a lack of oxygen so it can't burn, and eventually what you end up having is just this really cool carbon skeleton. Now I'm going to put up a picture, and this is what it looks like under a microscope. So what ends up happening when you do this is you end up opening up all these channels, all this surface area, and all these molecular bonding sites to it. I'll give you an example. This little piece of biochar that I'm holding right here, let's say this is 0.5 gram. The amount of surface area in that one piece of biochar is equal to a full tennis court. Let me say that again. The amount of surface area in that piece of biochar is equal to a full tennis court. You're going to have all these channels, all these tiny little holes, and all these little bonding sites going down to a molecular level that will actually attract things and hold things. Carbon in its raw form, let's say this is pure carbon, doesn't go away. So when you mix this into your soil, it'll sit there for hundreds and thousands of years. They have found carbon traces from biochar that actually they've dated it back, and I think some of it's like 3,000 to 7,000 years that they've dated some of this stuff. So when we're doing this, I want you to understand that this is a permanent fix that we're trying to do. So we've made a carbon structure, a carbon skeleton. We're going to get it into the soil, and it's going to stay there forever. It's not like any other product that eventually goes away. It's going to stay in your soil. So that is what biochar is. It is a carbon skeleton of what used to be wood. Some people use other things. Most people use wood. Now let's talk about how biochar works. Some people, I've heard it said that it almost acts like a coral reef. So if you go to an empty bay in an ocean and you build a coral reef, what ends up happening? Well, it ends up drawing in all this life form. And that's one way of saying it. Some people talk about it as a sponge. That's another way of saying it. But essentially what it does is, because we've opened up all this molecular bonding sites and all these hiding places, it will attract nutrients, it will attract microbial activity, and it will attract water and even fungus. So we've basically created this super condominium with all these little tiny micro places to hide that draws in water very rapidly, draws in nutrients, draws in microbial activity. So if this piece, so we put this into the soil and it's bringing in all that stuff, when it rains real heavy, all the nutrients are leaching through the soil and they're disappearing out of the soil. However, since we've mixed biochar into that soil, the nutrients are actually staying inside that little piece of carbon. So it's holding it. So it's not being leached out. If you have a drought and your soil completely dries out, the microbial activity can actually die off in your lawn. Well, if it has that little supercondo that has water hidden inside of it, guess what? Your microbes and your good bacteria, good fungi, they can all survive now through drought periods. So that's what it does. It basically acts as tiny little apartments that we're putting all through our soil and all through our lawn that attract all these good things and hold them and protect them in the soil. That's what it does. What is the goal of biochar? The goal of biochar is to essentially reduce the amount of fertilizers that we use in our soil. That's the ultimate goal of it, is to produce a super healthy, rich soil that you can stick a plant in, or grass, stick a plant in, not put down any fertilizer or very little fertilizer, and it just absolutely just grows like crazy because there's a ton of nutrients, there's a ton of microbial activity, there's a bunch of good stuff. Your soil is now rich and is holding all that stuff, and it's not just disappearing. That is the goal. The ultimate goal is to create rich, fertile soil through the use of two things, from adding biochar and adding organic matter. When you add the organic matter on top of the biochar, you get this reaction, and you can even add in a little bit of nutrients on top of that, and you have fantastic soil. So now I'm going to put up an image that shows you from the Amazon. Well, let me start by saying this. When people think about the Amazon, they think about, oh, it's the rainforest, it must have great soil. It's actually the opposite. The Amazon has the worst soil in the world, just about. Almost nothing can grow there because it's a big canopy and nothing reaches. Sunlight doesn't reach, nothing grows on the floor, a few leaves die. As a matter of fact, the researchers down there found it's such poor soil that a lot of the tree roots actually grow up and trying to get any nutrients that are falling at the top of the soil because it's so poor. Thousands and thousands of years ago, the ancients figured out a way to take this soil and turn it into the world's richest soil. The world's richest soil is called terra preta. Basically, if you take the standard soil and you compare terra preta, there's an 800% production difference, anywhere from a 400 to 800% production difference if you were to stick two crops in it. It's absolutely amazing. So how is this terra preta created? Well, look on the left. The left is the original soil of the Amazon, and the right is terra preta. And what they found was that these ancient civilizations, what they would do is they would actually make biochar. They would actually make this special charcoal. They would mix it, till it into the soil, and then they would throw all kinds of crap in it. So if it came from the earth, they would return it to the earth. Everything. They found waste facilities, human waste facilities. They would return human waste. They would return bones. Once they ate the fish, they'd throw all the fish bones back in. When they had excess foliage from whatever they were doing, everything went back. Pottery, huge amounts of pottery. So all their trash, they would basically mix into the soil, organic matter, along with this biochar. And over thousands and thousands of years, or hundreds of years, they were able to grow the most amazing product or produce and crops that you've ever seen. And when you watch, I'm not explaining that well, but when you watch that video on that page, it really is cool to see how this was discovered, the scientists down there digging it up. Okay, so now let's talk about charging, inoculation, and preloading. Now I'm going to warn you, some people are going to mislead you on this with the wrong information. Inoculating, so I'm putting an empty sponge into the soil. What's going to happen? Well, that sponge is going to absorb nutrients from the soil, microbial activity. It's going to absorb good things from the soil. So what they're finding is that when you till this into the soil, that your first year, you really don't see any benefits because it's kind of pulling nutrients rather than delivering nutrients back in. And it's in year 2 that you actually get the benefits from this. So what the majority of gardeners do, vegetable gardeners, and flowers and everything else, is they take biochar, they add some nutrients to it, they add microbial activity, and then they mix it into their compost. So they create this supercharged compost, which has a lot of biochar, and this biochar becomes activated. So what happens in that compost pile is your sponge loads up in that compost pile. So it now gathers nutrients, and it now gathers microbial activity. It gathers water. It gathers all this stuff. And we're going to show that this year. This year I'm going to make biochar or humichar compost. I'm going to show you how to do that for your gardens this year, how to preload it and pre-charge it, because we're going to till it into the soil, and it's going to be deep in the soil. So we want it pre-charged because we want immediate results. However, that isn't necessary. You don't have to do that when you're putting it on the top. When you're putting it on the top, what else are we going to be putting top down and it's working its way down? Well, as we're going to be putting fertilizers on the top, it's going to be traveling through the thatch layer. It's going to be picking up those nutrients. It's going to be picking up the microbial activity. And it's going to take several weeks, if not months, for that eventually to work down into the root system. And within the first couple of weeks, it's going to preload itself. So we're going to put the humichar down. We'll put PGF Complete on top of it as a lawn fertilizer. We may even spray some super juice with some extra, if you wanted to charge it, you could get something like, this is a microbial super pack. We'll be putting a little bit of microbial super pack in our super juice and spraying it. You can do that too if you want. But really, it's going to preload, pre-inoculate, and pre-charge itself because it's working down over a period of a couple weeks into the soil. So it does that kind of preload all by itself. If you're going to put it tilled into a soil, it will not have that option. It's going to draw from the soil before it releases. With the top-down method, it will actually pre-charge and pre-inoculate it as it works down through the thatch layer into that top soil layer. It'll slowly work down in the soil. So you really do not have to worry about preloading, pre-charging, or inoculating when you're putting this top-down on a lawn. But we are going to do some of that this year, and I'll show you how to do that. Basically, we're going to take super juice, and we're going to add a little bit of microbial activity. We're going to put down the humichar. We're going to spray it, wait a little while, then water it down in, and we can do that. But we don't have to do that. You can just put it down. Okay, so now let's talk about being careful what you buy. I spent the past few months ordering a bunch of different biochars, and it's interesting. Something will say it's biochar, and it's not biochar. It's actually a compost mix with biochar in it. Personally, I do not use any biochars that are preloaded with fertilizer because the two should be separate. Your fertilization and your biochar application should be two separate things because you want to do your biochar fairly heavy and you want to do it fairly often. So I'm going to be putting out biochar this year every single month. I'm going to do an application of this biochar, but my fertilizer is going to be maybe every 8 weeks or so, every 6 to 8 weeks. So personally, I strongly recommend that you look for separate. I want you to put your biochar out separate from your fertilization. Because they're two totally different things. It really doesn't make sense. Okay, when to apply biochar in your lawn? Anytime during the growing season. We're going to start to do it early. We're going to start to do it probably. So my grass turns green end of March, beginning of April. We're going to start when we put out our pre-emergence. That's when I'm going to start by I'm going to be putting out our biochar treatments from the beginning at the very beginning because we want it working down into the soil. Every 30 days, I'm going to be doing a coat of biochar on all the lawns this year. And it's going to be the testing we've done with it. We've already seen This year, we've done testing with a cheap organic matter that I'm going to show you in another video coming up, that when you put down your biochar, you can put down this dirt cheap organic matter, and the two of those combined, it's just, we've seen green stripes on lawns just by doing that with no fertilizer. We're still going to be using PGF Complete, which is a very mild fertilizer. That's the fertilizer you want to use. You can also use Super Juice with this. It's the perfect combination. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little demonstration over here. I'm going to leave you here for a minute. But the first thing I want to do is I want to put up what regular biochar looks like versus the Humichar real quick. So I've got a little box here, and on this box I've got regular biochar that you might buy somewhere on this side, and then I've got Humichar, which is the DG dispersible granules over here. So you can see they're just little round particles. They fit in a spreader real easy. This biochar here, you can see that there's big chunks. And let me explain something. I'm going to go outside. I shot a video early this morning. I'm going to show you the difference. Now what you're going to see here is a test area we did about a month ago. On the left side is Humichar that we put down, and it disappeared within 1 minute. It went through the grass, went through the thatch layer, and it was gone. But we applied this other biochar to the top over a month ago, and you can see that it's still sitting on top. Remember, what did I say before? If it doesn't make it to the root zone, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's preacher. It doesn't matter anything. If it doesn't make it to the root zones, it doesn't work. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two products and I'm going to show you how they react in water. So let me grab that real quick. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in regular biochar. And you can see that regular biochar pretty much does not a whole lot. It'll sit there, whatever size it is, that's the size it is. So it doesn't have any kind of action. You still have these big chunks inside of there. And a lot of these big chunks are just going to sit there on top of your lawn. And they're actually going to get kind of nasty and cause your feet to get black. So now let me show you what Humichar, the difference with Humichar. All right, so now I'm going to put some Humichar in here. And I want you to watch what happens. Oh, it takes usually about 30 seconds or so. And what you're going to see is you're going to see that the Humichar, I'm going to zoom in a bit here. You're going to see that the Humichar turns into micro dust. Look at it. Every single basically every single piece of it turns into this micro dust, and that'll work directly into your soil. All right, so that's the difference between a regular biochar product and a Humichar product. Regular biochar, a lot of that material is just going to sit on top of your grass. Every time it rains, you're going to be dragging in black stuff on your feet. The Humichar, as soon as you wet it, it'll start to dissolve, and then go back and wet it again, or just put it out in the rain. It'll go through everything and be sitting on top of your soil within a couple hours. Gone, done. Perfect. That's why it's designed. Now, Humichar is 50% humic acid and 50% biochar. So, why is that? Let's explain the difference between the two. Humic acid. Humic acid, humic acid is fast reacting. Humic acid will go in, contains humates and fulvic acid. It has humic acid and fulvic acid inside of it. And they do two basic jobs. Humic part of this turns your soil into more, let's just call it magnetic. It makes the soil hold on to the nutrients longer so that as water passes through, your nutrients don't wash away. So the humic part of humic acid works on the soil. It allows the soil to hold your nutrients longer. The fulvic acid part actually acts like some kind of, I call it lawn Viagra, root Viagra. It actually stimulates the roots of the plants, opens up the membranes, and allows the roots to uptake the nutrients and the plant to process the nutrients better. So that's humic acid. Humic acid works immediately. Within days, it starts to work within days. and it treats the soil. It's like a conditioner, and it makes it hold on. It's a CEC, the cation exchange capability. It actually helps the soil hold on to nutrients, and it helps the plant use those nutrients better. That's what humic acid does. Biochar, and humic acid will last usually about half a season or one season. Biochar is different. Biochar really doesn't do a whole lot by itself right away. And biochar never goes away. Once you put it into the soil, it's permanent. And that's the difference between the two. So that's why humichar is a 50-50. You're going to get immediate results from the humic acid. You're going to get the long-term results and permanent results from the biochar. So that's why it's a 50-50 mix. We love to use the studies have been going on for decades on this, people. Decades and decades. And I'll even put a video of people showing the different plant rates. And we're going to show you this year the different growth rates, just adding biochar to different things and how it improves it. But the research is hands down proven that biochar, when used properly, will absolutely increase 100, 200, 300%, especially like some crops and flowers with less fertilizer. On lawns, the same thing is true. It just takes a little bit longer, and you have to have a biochar that can actually reach down to the soil, because if it can't get down to the soil, it doesn't do any good. So the difference between the two, this is why it's a 50-50. Humic acid goes in, starts working immediately. The biochar takes longer to work down into the soil and will take a little bit longer to benefit, but the benefits of that biochar are for years and years and years. We're going to be using less fertilizer and less fertilizer and less fertilizer. Matter of fact, it'll probably get to the point in a couple of years where the only thing you have to put on your lawn to have a beautiful green lawn is organic matter, cheap organic matter. And I'm going to show you, I'm telling you, I'm going to show you an organic matter that you could buy for about $13, $14 for a 50-pound bag and go out and apply to your lawn. That's going to be one of the upcoming videos I'm doing. So make sure you click that subscribe button video. You don't want to miss that. When do you apply biochar? You apply it anytime you want with any other product. I don't care what you're doing. You can put it down anytime. We're going to be applying it to the lawn every single month this year during the growing season. How much to put down? Remember, there's no nutrients, so it's not like you have to be real careful. X amount of pounds per 1,000 square feet. You can put down as much as you want, as much as you can afford. If you want to put half an inch of biochar on your ground, go right ahead. You can do that. Typically, the majority of the studies that have been done have shown anywhere from, I think it's about a 4% to 20% is where it varies quite a bit. Percentage of the soil. So if you're adding 4% biochar to your total soil, and that's total deep soil, in a garden, anywhere from 4% to 20% is typically the range that people are working with. I've heard all kinds of numbers, but that's the range. It's hard to think about that on a lawn scale because we're treating top down. So, if my roots are 6 inches deep, how much do I have to put to get 5% biochar into that soil? I don't know. So it's beyond me. So this is now, I do not know the size, to be honest, of the new humichar bags that'll be available. That's what humichar looks like. It's all pelletized. And the reason being is when they were going through the production process, they weren't sure of the weight, size, and density because it's a 50-50 mix of humic acid to 50% of the biochar. So they're not sure if it's going to be like a 35-pound bag or a 45-pound bag, but it is going to be available, I think, this year only in the larger bag. So it'll be in that larger bag size. Again, you'll be able to get this product. You can come back to our website, howtowithdoc.com, or you can go to humichar.com, and I'll have the direct Amazon links for that. And here's your warning about this. A lot of people are probably going to get upset because they're like, it shows that it's currently unavailable. Well, it's going to sell out. I'm going to tell you this. They had to redo the entire construction and processing lines of the plant for this because it's a special formula. So the production on it is moderate to slow, and it is going to sell out. So when you see it's available, I would go ahead and buy what you need for at least 2 treatments. I'm going to order a crap load of it because I want to put it out every 30 days, and I'm doing my lawn, I'll be doing Barb's lawn, I'll be doing the world's worst lawn, I'll probably be doing that test lawn. I think I might have one other lawn. So, I mean, I'm probably have to get a darn shed just for the Humichar that I need this year. But it's a worthwhile, here's the nice thing about Humichar is that it's a long-term investment that you eventually start to taper off. You don't have to keep putting it off. So you can really do heavy Humichar treatments for the first year, then slow it down the second year, and then the third year pretty much be pretty done with it. And I think by year 3, you'll be putting down a tiny amount of fertilizer, especially just to correct any issues you might have, and then just applying this organic matter. And I'm telling you, that's the point we'll get to. We'll get to the point with lawns where we're using very, very little fertilizer, and we're simply just adding organic matter and allowing the microbes to eat the organic matter, which then produces the nutrients, which then feeds the lawn. That's kind of where we want to get to. Remember, this is a completely different product than anything that's on the market. A lot of people are going to say, well, this is better. This is completely different. This has no nutrients in it. Don't buy stuff with nutrients in it. Don't buy biochar lawn applications with nutrients. Keep those separate because you want to be able to time those separate. And make sure you're not buying mixes. Make sure that's why I said it, just Humichar is just a wonderful stuff. So anyways, guys, we're going to be doing a lot of videos on this. Click the subscribe button. I hope this has helped you understand a little bit what biochar is. And again, go to the page. If you're still unclear about anything, go to the page below and it'll help you. Done.